Great. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the TST meeting. Today it may be a short one, but we didn't have any primary topic, but we figured we would keep it on cadence and leave it open for general discussion, and also for us to give the community an update on where we are along the Peacock release with respect to the platform upgrade, Java 10 upgrade, and Incubator cleanup. And so I think we can probably start with that particular topic, and then leave it open for discussions about things like Atomix, various other mine releases, and things like that. So, Ray, do you want to start with the platform upgrade?
Sure. Last week we moved the special development branch that the core team had been using, and it is now the master branch. We've called that 2.0. What was formerly the master branch is now ONOS 1.15.0 as a support branch. This is a bit painful because almost every file has changed in 2.0. So cherry picks are a little annoying. Sorry about that. We have to do them manually. Mostly because of the changes to the OSGI imports. We've got some very basic QA going on 2.0. That's going a little slowly because the Karaf people decided that they were going to radically change the format of the CLI command outputs, and that is breaking scripts left and right. So that's what John has been banging his head against. STC runs really nicely up to about 5 controllers, so very happy with that. UI seems to be working fine. CLI modulo these changes in format seems to be working okay. What we need to do now is work more on wider clusters. I tried 7 yesterday, it didn't work at all. And we are going to, the next, thing we're going to try to get into 2.0 is an upgrade to Java 10 or maybe even Java 11. I tried various things. I can't quite get that to work. Bazel is supplying some command line arguments to the Java compiler that the Java 10 compiler is rejecting. So clearly I'm doing something wrong. I need to circle back and work on that a little more. Other than that, the source code disaggregation project, Thomas took on the let's get rid of the incubator task. That's mostly done. That actually went much more smoothly than I thought it would. And Thomas, can you talk to that a little bit about what you actually did?
Sure. So there were a number of, as you know, Incubator was an area where we would grow functionality originally intended to, that's eventually intended to land in a core. Now, some of those projects succeeded and actually already had been integrated into the core, but some of those ended up lingering in the incubator, which was never anything that we intended to do. It was not a long place for code to live long term. And so we decided that we would, that the incubator experiment was kind of reached its conclusion. And so I've taken, basically I've disaggregated it throughout the rest of the code. So there were pieces of code that were kind of left half-baked, like the virtual networking, the tunnels, and resource labels. I moved those to set their own applications under the apps tree, preserving all of the functionality, or at least near all of the functionality. I think there were some unit tests in virtual networking that I have ignored for right now. I think there's like 6 tests that were failing that I didn't have time to dig into, but we can always resurrect them. And that meant also taking a number of kind of the peripheral pieces of code that were spread throughout the kind of core base, like the CLI, REST API, and moving that were associated with that code and moving them to those applications as well. So virtual network, resource labels, tunnels were all moved to the applications. There were some pieces that were actually moved to the core, like for example, the protobuf models were moved to the core. And there was some really half-baked code from the gRPC registry experiment that I did that was not really functioning, was not hooked to the build for last 3 releases. And so I decided to leave it in place in the incubator, and I've renamed the incubator into essentially graveyard, because I think the goal is to remove that before the end of the release entirely. I think that code is gone beyond repair, and besides, we decided to address the gRPC in a slightly different way anyway. So that's where things are at. There's no mention of Incubator in any of the build files. All of the applications that required those pieces of code from computers have been, their build files have been changed to depend now on those respective applications. The build works fine. The unit tests, save those 6 or 4 unit tests that I've obsoleted, are working fine as well. The only thing that needs to be done is some of the affected applications, for example, like the TE tunnel, which depends on the tunneling, may need to be verified with respect to runtime, because we don't have STC tests for that, or QA doesn't have tests for that. So the stakeholders or the owners of those apps will have to do the verification on their own. So that's where things are at.
All right, thank you,
Tom, just a quick observation. I know the fault management application, which really dealt with alarms and other things like that, was moved to its separate app. I mean, it was already an app, but it was in Incubator. Yeah. But there are a few southbound related classes, such as a few alarm providers, that actually depend on fault management, because it was the place where there were a few behaviors, and actually the whole store for alarms and everything like that is included in.
I'm glad you brought that up, Andrea. So I forgot about that. So the API for the fault management stuff, the alarms and things like that, were in the incubator, and those have been moved to the core API. So they've been promoted to the core API, and the implementation of the fault management and the store and things like that were already located in the extensions, either in the providers, as you mentioned, like the SNMP provider, or in the app fault management app, which kind of provide. So yeah, so that's, I forgot about that. Thank you for reminding me. That's been promoted to the core.
Okay, but the implementation, for example, let's say the store, the alarm store, I think, the distributed alarm store is now being moved to the fault management application. So I would still, are we okay with still having a few southbound providers depending on an app?
Oh, absolutely.
It's more of a logical question, not than a technical one.
Oh, I see. Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's absolutely okay. As a matter of fact, right, if you have a deployment that does not need fault alarms, then there's no need for them to activate the extension, right? Nor the provider. But if they need it, then and this is one way to extend the core, is basically to provide. I mean, that's how we do it with other things.
Yeah, no, most definitely. I was just making sure that we were okay with that.
Yes.
Runtime dependency.
Absolutely, yes.
Thomas, this is Tom Tofik. I've been really thinking deeply about, the ONOS roadmap, and, how do we bring in maybe learning and control, machine learning control, either, as a, core part of ONOS, or maybe integrated part of with something else. Have we thought about how do we, basically bring basic autonomousness to some of the intent framework, or maybe, with respect to what we can learn the control plane, basically. Can we create these inferences from these alarms and events and what we learn and analytics and all of that, and bring it to ONOS some way, for the future?
So I mean, absolutely. I think the intent was always to, the ONOS is not intended to be a platform for everything, right? So the goal of ONOS is to provide a platform for control and configuration applications. kind of that deal with providing the dynamic behavior of SDN networks. The idea here is that if you have platforms that need to do, let's say, like analytics or machine learning or some deeper inspection of the data, which is not necessarily in line with the control, the idea is to outsource those to platforms which have been designed for those purposes. So ONOS is not intended to be an analytics platform. If anything, it's just one of the sources of analytics. And we ship off the data using some means, whether it's Karaf, RabbitMQ, or REST APIs, or other export mechanisms, off to the other platforms that are designed for analytics or for machine learning or whatever. Right? So the idea is to achieve those goals through integration rather than through extension of ONOS capabilities, because that's not what we're strong in, right? I mean, this is not intended to be a machine learning platform.
Yeah, but instead of having inferences that are today static or based on some, basically intents that are described, we could potentially get our inferences from the machine learning engine that are collaborating with ONOS. Is that a possibility? Or those interfaces we need to think about?
No, of course, right? I mean, you just like if we feed sensory data and telemetry off platform to something that analyzes it and can make inferences, can learn from it, and can make predictions, and then can feed control signals back to ONOS, and ONOS will convey those to the environment. Fairly straightforward closed loop. Now, whether or not we, with what granularity we do this, that remains to be decided, right?
Right. So maybe that would be good to put something on the agenda in terms of that interface specification. What is that interface that we can talk to the external machine learning?
Tom,
I don't think ONOS talks to the machine learning. I think the machine learning talks to ONOS. ONOS is just a data source.
Exactly.
Yeah, but what does ONOS accept? Does it accept a model? Does it accept intent? It's not,
Tom,
protobuf, or what is that interface that we need to decide how we are going to communicate or get that information from machine learning?
So there was an effort from some of the people at the Polytechnic of Milan, which was called Intent Monitor and Reroute, which was collecting flow statistics out of the ONOS controller, and then basically reprogramming existing intents. It was an initial effort with a host-to-host intent. Actually, it was a point-to-point intent, pardon me. So it was collecting the flows, munching them in an external machine learning based algorithm, and then reprogramming the ONOS controlled network through high-level intents with the suggested path.
Yeah, that'll be good.
That was an initial effort that it was going in the direction you're talking about.
Okay, perfect. If we can maybe discuss it. I'm just trying to see, because our 5G networks and beyond 5G, AI and machine learning and learning the control plane is on the table, right? I mean, this was evidence from Sachin Kati's.
For sure, but I don't think we know enough information, and I don't think it's a function of how hard we thought about it or not, that we will not be able to know what kind of information we need. I think that will vary and will be very situational, what it is that we want to learn from. So I think what's important is that the more bound interfaces of ONOS are comprehensive. That means that they allow access to the information that ONOS has on offer, and that they're reasonably granular and efficient, that the information can be obtained with good efficiency, with minimum impact on the running system. I think that's the most important.
Okay.
What kind of information is then really up to be picked by the platform that needs to extract it from ONOS?
Okay, no, I got it. I just want to make sure that we realize that going forward, analytics and machine learning is part of our future.
Oh, for sure, absolutely. I mean, and that's one of the goals of, we're looking at, and this is a little bit switching to a different topic, we're looking at refreshing the architecture of ONOS. What we've done with current release of ONOS is we took the existing architecture and we refreshed we made sure that it's using the latest and greatest of the founding pillars of the other open source projects that we rest on. Things like Apache, we're now sitting on the latest one. Things like Java or JDK, the goal is to, and we've already refreshed it to 9, and I think it's only a question of a couple of days or weeks to figure out how we can make it work with Java 10 and 11. And so the existing architecture and the platform built using it will be kind of set for some good amount of time with respect to stability, and we'll have kind of a long runway because we've updated all of these dependencies. And so this is going to give us time to start looking ahead and maybe thinking about the next generation of ONOS. How do we want to put it together? And this may be the opportunity to think about building things from the get-go around gRPC interfaces, around microservices, and leveraging the lessons that we've learned, a number of the code modules that we've invested in, but not necessarily be constrained by the limits of the existing architecture and existing code base. And so so the runway that we kind of created for the existing architecture will give us a runway to invest in the new architecture.
Excellent.
And that will clearly take into consideration some of the needs of things like analytics, machine learning, and
perfect. And Thomas, one last item, and I stop asking questions. I think this roadmap or this architecture will not just be limited to Java, specifically.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Correct, yes. Which hence the choice of gRPC interfaces, because that'll basically open it up to probably like 10 or a dozen different language choices from which the various pieces of the system can be constructed.
Excellent. Okay.
Absolutely.
So
and that includes Java, right? I mean, we have for example, we have significant investment in the distributed primitives and the distributed core done in Atomix, which is done in Java, and I would assume that we would carry that forward. We would just have to reframe on how it's utilized within the new scheme of things.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Yeah, and so given that, it's also, I'm going to use that as a segue to one of the goals of the Peacock release was to start on code-based disaggregation, where we would start carving the existing source code base into multiple different repositories to facilitate, faster builds and potentially more granular ownership for the different repositories. But I think given the fact that the platform is now stable, and then we would like the community to start kind of taking more custody of it, so that the platform team and others in the community who are interested can start looking ahead. We don't want to dig up dig a new hole, start digging a new hole without having the commitment to finish it. And so we've decided, at least I've decided that, and clearly you feel free to disagree, that we should not commence the code-based disaggregation and just leave the existing ONOS code base as is, with Incubator clean, with all of the platform pieces upgraded and stable, and just leave it that way while we focus our energies going forward. And so we would effectively forego the code-based disaggregation task for Peacock. And I'll leave it there, take a breath, and leave it open for comment.
I'm just glad disaggregation is coming.
Well, certainly going to be a key part of it, right, David?
Yeah.
I have a question on the architecture side. When you mentioned disaggregation and all of that, that's obviously something that we want going forward. But I think that some of the key high-level distribution of separation of concerns between the ONOS models with the northbound, the southbound, and the core, those still have a deep value. So I would definitely like to discuss what we would take from an architectural perspective going forward towards this new phase of ONOS, not just from a disaggregated point of view, but also from a code architecture. Let's put it this way.
Oh, absolutely right. I mean, we want to carry forward anything that makes sense and anything that we find of value. And certainly some of the basic tenets that we have with ONOS, which has to do with being distributed, so that it provides tolerance and scalability and performance. Clearly, that we want to carry that forward. Now, how we assemble the new architecture may be slightly different, but we definitely want the tenant to survive. Same thing with abstractions. We want abstractions to survive. We don't want applications to be dependent on Yang models or SNMP MIBs or even OpenFlow or P4, right? There may be something else beyond P4. So that we definitely do not want to wire ourselves to that. So again, the abstractions will be important. And so will kind of the SDK will be for the applications platform. This being a good applications platform. It's just how we assemble it may be a little bit different. And for sure, the separation of specifically kind of the subset of the abstractions, which is separation of southbound from the core and the northbound from the core, will be very, very important. And I think this is where the gRPC interfaces will come in, and it will, they will just provide a more flexible interface. Flexible, what I mean is that will allow us to arrange the different functionality in different pieces than in a monolithic JVM. So that's absolutely correct and good observation, Andrea.
Thanks for that, Tom.
I want to point out that we were hoping that we would be able to gradually evolve the existing architecture over time, and that certainly would be possible. But I think it's becoming clear that endeavor is following that path would require a lot of time to accomplish that endeavor. And so I think, and at the same time, we would kind of present ever-changing platform shape for applications. And so I think it's probably better that we kind of stabilize the existing platform. Trell is still going to continue to work on it. It's still going to be used in deployments by companies like Comcast and others. And so it'll be a nice, stable platform, the existing architecture and existing product. But I think we can then start looking at establishing a new, basically a replacement, a future replacement, which will use slightly different architectural building blocks, and which will carry forward the lessons from the past. So the benefits, it'll carry the good traits, and we can give us an opportunity to leave some of the traits behind.
Sure, that makes total sense to me.
Looks like we lost David. Hopefully it was just a technical problem or ran out of time. So, I mean, that's kind of all I had in mind for today's agenda. If folks have any other topics or discussion points, feel free to bring those up. If not, we can call the meeting done and give everybody their 30 minutes of the day back.
Just a minor question. When are we targeting the 2.0 stable release?
It should be still before Christmas, the original peacock timeline.
Okay, sounds good.
For holidays, and that's one of the reasons. We also another reason to forego the code-based disaggregation, because with the platform changing significantly and Incubator moving, we would like some extra time to bake it through QA. So effectively, I think the only task we have from the platform team is to get the JDK 10 or JDK 11 working and start testing, and basically just do a code freeze very shortly after the Thanksgiving holidays.
Yeah, so, sounds good to me. I just asked because from the ODTN perspective, I've been asked that we could actually pick 2.0 as a sort of a stable release and develop against it for the future functionality, at least until 2.1 comes out, because we have had some problems by just staying on the bleeding edge, and a lot of developer time was spent on catching up. So that's why I think that having the 2.0 release out by Christmas is actually a very good thing. So by start of next year, we can at least some of the projects can move to it as a more stable platform to develop the solutions against.
Yeah, and that's the goal. I mean, 2.0 is effectively what 1.15 was supposed to be, but because of the backwards compatibility, the breakage that was forced on us by the some of the Apache and OSGI changes, 1.15 was kind of done as a midway point, as a punctuation at the end of the existing workstream. That's workstream based on Apache Karaf 308, and the 2.0 is effectively just the new start of the new workstream. So yeah, it'll definitely be then.
Sounds good to me. Thanks.
Anyway, so you know, I kind of gave a preview of what we expect with the next generation of ONOS. Now, this is just kind of the vague a notion at this point in time. I promise it will crystallize eventually, and we do intend to engage the community from the get-go as we start this effort, so that everything is done entirely in the open and gives everyone an opportunity to participate in the shape of the next generation. So this is just something we just started to think about very recently, so it's not something that's been brewing for a long time. So you're getting the latest and greatest kind of a mind dump here. All right. So unless there's other topics, we can call it a day for today, and we'll see everybody in 2 weeks. And I think in 2 weeks we have a Peacock Milestone 2 review. So there will be some demos and updates regarding our progress towards the Peacock release. All right. Have a great day, everybody. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Oh, by the way, Tom, sorry, to 2 weeks from now, it's the week before ONF Connect. We will keep it as a standing meeting, or will we move it?
If it's not in conflict with ONF Connect, I would like to keep it because it was on the calendar.
Yes, then okay, perfect. Thanks.
Be just an hour of time and hopefully not much prep for it, because people should already have done most of the work. I would expect you go. Okay. Okay.
Thanks.
So you're gonna be in town, right? Then you're gonna be in Menlo.
Yes.